Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Theater on Monday Talk Series, where we discuss the essence of theater. Community theater is an alive, growing, and evolving organism. And Larisa Netterlund is here to talk about how we have an obligation to foster that growth.
So, community theaters. What's the one thing that's always on our mind, from actors to the board members to the directors? We need audiences, right? How do we get more butts in seats? How do we get them to pay 75 cents more to see this production? How do we get a new generation involved in making and watching community theater? Well, as the token millennial here tonight, I think I have something to say about how you bring the new generation in, at least something about how you bring me in to do stuff, so at least have that going for me. But what I really want to talk about today is how important audiences are to making theater. Now, theater is the only art form that requires someone to watch it for it to exist. If you paint a painting and no one sees it, it's still a painting, right? If you go in your room and you play the violin and no one else hears you, it's still music. But if you make a play, you create theater, and no one watches it, what is it? It's rehearsal, right? Yeah, it's rehearsal. It requires an audience. Now, something that I'm kind of ashamed to say maybe in this setting is sometimes your cliched community theater tends to pander to that audience a little bit. It does what they expect. We're afraid to take chances because our audience doesn't like that kind of thing, right? Yeah, you've all heard it. I'm seeing the heads nod, right? Yes. So sometimes we put on another production of Steel Magnolias because it's been 3 years and the audience is ready to see it again and they pay good money to see that show. So it often comes to meeting the community's expectations rather than raising the community's expectations. Now, I'm here to tell you that we can trust our audiences. We can trust them and we can challenge them. Because audiences, like all humans, have a superpower. That superpower is the suspension of disbelief. We all have it. I love it. It's so interesting to talk about. It's this thing where we're the only creatures on earth where we can know that something isn't true. We can actively know that it is essentially a lie, but we're right there the whole time. It can move us. It can make us laugh, even though we know it's not true. It's such an amazing, amazing thing, the suspension of disbelief. So suspension of disbelief is the thing that allows your audiences to know that that kitchen sink is a kitchen sink even if there's no actual running water, right? Suspension of disbelief is the thing that makes you maybe buy into the fact that I have a knife right now. And it's a little bit sharp. Suspension of disbelief is the thing that might make you cringe if I do that or this. Right? You're there with me. Look, I'm fine. You're right there with me. We can trust our audiences to do that. Nick Offerman of Parks and Recreation fame, some of you might know him as Ron Swanson, had this to say in his book, Paddle Your Own Canoe. When an audience has to buy into whatever illusion that you've created, say maybe a motorcycle made out of 2 people with some mailing tubes and 2 umbrellas, they experience the delight of creating with the performers. In the imagination, that's more fun and abiding for them because they are a part of the transaction, as opposed to just sitting and coldly observing. It's about making the magic real. And that's really what theater's all about, isn't it? It's about making the magic real. So how can we trust our audience to do that with us, to be a part of the process, not just sit there and watch us? Well, I think that one thing that we can do is we can trust them because it brings freedom. We can let go a little bit of that control that we have and allow them to be a part of the process because it gives us freedom to make bold choices. This is a speech I give every acting class I've ever taught. There are no right or wrong choices in theater. There's only bold choices and wimpy choices. Now, there's better bold choices. For example, there's better bold choices and there's worse bold choices because I wouldn't line up to see, for example, zombie steel magnolias, but there is an audience for that. You can bet your ass there's an audience for that. And it's not the people who are seeing your shows right now, right? So bold choices, it gives us that opportunity by challenging and trusting our audience to try new things. It gives freedom for our actors to make bold choices, to have inspired and nuanced performances, where they can put away with this idea of, oh, the audience won't get it if I don't cry here. Crying equals sad, and yelling equals angry. It can be, if we trust our audience, we can acknowledge that human emotion sometimes shows up in unexpected ways, that sometimes humans are kind of irrational, so why shouldn't our characters be irrational too? Trusting our audience gives us the ability as directors to tell new stories, or to tell old stories in new ways. And finally, trusting our audiences gives companies the opportunity to do more with less, with a little bit of imagination, some creativity, and trusting our audience to get it. We can do new things, exciting things. So if you want my opinion on how to bring in a new generation to create theater and to watch theater, stop pandering. Ask them to come in. Ask them to create with you, to make the magic real. Engage their intellect and inspire their imagination. It's time for the rehearsals to be over, and we need to have a real performance. Thank you.